Classic Restos is proudly brought to you by Shannons, where you can sign up to be a member of the Shannons Club, your local Holden certified service centre, Pace Farm the enjoyable egg, and Heron Forbes Machinery House, where you can buy online. G'day, I'm Fletch and welcome to today's show. I have brought you to a regional area, just a peanut butter sandwich and a thermos of hot tea away from Braidwood, New South Wales. You're about to see an incredible, eclectic collection of cars coming your way in this week's Classic Restos on the road. You guys get to see the finished product, but sometimes behind the scenes, getting lost trying to find the location can all be in a day's work. I love jobs like this. Miles of dirt road trying to get here. The old EB Falcon looks as though it's done some work. Beautiful. Out in the middle of bloody nowhere. Meet Antony Davies, one of the most qualified antiques and fine arts valuers in Australia, with over 30 years international experience. Antony is approved to value for the Australian Commonwealth Government's Cultural Gifts Program in the categories of Australian colonial furniture, English and continental furniture, decorative and applied art, film and props, horse-drawn vehicles, silver and historic vehicles. Valuations for other purposes are available in all categories of the fine arts and collecting. Antony worked as a senior specialist at Sotheby's in London between 1982 and 1995 and was responsible for many important sales in Australasia. I could keep on going here, but I know that you're as eager as I am to see Antony's car collection. From what I've heard so far, there's a few Sunbeams ranging from 1912 to 1929, a couple of Model T Fords, some Austins, and a Morris Cowley, just to name a few. So now it's time to stop the voiceover and go see what this interesting individual has to show us. Well, here we are in the gorgeous Mount Elrington. How are you, Antony?
I'm well, thanks, Fletch.
Thank you for having us here today.
Pleasure. Welcome.
Before we start looking at the fantastic display of cars that you've got, this property here, going back to 1827, what can you tell us about it?
It's one of the earliest properties in the Southern Tablelands. It was, in fact, the earliest property in this particular region. And the property was settled by Major Elrington and his 13-year-old son and their 75-year-old nanny. They arrived by bullock train from Sydney in 1827. Took 6 months to get here. And
6 months to get here?
And there've been 3 families on the property since then.
It's amazing when we think about this too, like in these times, it's not as though there was a road. Like when they first got here, they had to find their way.
Yeah, no road, no signposts, no bridges, no towns, no inns, no pubs.
No one to stop and ask. No GPS.
Yeah.
It makes us wonder how they did it.
Yeah, I don't quite know. I wonder that they've sort of arrived at a spot, thought this is nice, we'll take this bit, but I guess they probably had a broad map to start with.
The old stonework over there, Antony, what in front of the house, what did that used to be?
There was a secure lockup, which was one of the first parts of the building they built to put their stores in, which were very valuable. Although there were very few people down here, there were escaped convicts and people who who needed food and supplies, and so they had to lock things up.
The big showcase behind us, what awaits us inside. We've got some beautiful glass there meeting the ground. We've got some beautiful eclectic vehicles in behind there. There's a bit going on in there, isn't there, Antony?
Yeah, well, we had a large collection, had quite a much larger collection, including carriages and other things, but we reduced it to this number of our favourites, and so the building has been put up to cover that particular group. There's a dozen cars.
We walk inside a line of beautiful cars. Let's kick things off with this 1925 Austin. What can you tell us about this car, Antony?
Well, the Austin 12, 1925. So Austin 12s were a very good quality, medium-sized English car, very popular, a bit bigger than the Austin 7. We've got one of those further down the row here. I have two Austin 12s. So this one is a Hereford Roadster. Originally it was a tourer, but it was converted to a ute, like lots of cars in the 1920s, and later restored as a Hereford Roadster, so it's got a dicky seat.
Yeah.
Fairly recent to our collection, but I've been restoring the one alongside it. It's a 1926 Austin 12 Tourer, and I thought it'd be handy to have one to refer to.
Yeah. It's a fairly comprehensive vehicle. It's fairly featured for 1925, isn't it? The first glance at the dashboard, that's nicely styled as well.
Well, it's got some instruments. They don't get a lot on an Austin 12, but you have oil and temperature and a speedometer.
It's got more than some others though.
Oh yeah, absolutely, quite good. It was a very good quality car. Lots of aluminium in the castings. 4-cylinder. It's got a 4-speed gearbox. This was a fully imported English car, so it has a narrow track, slightly taller wheels than the Australian version.
Talking of the features for 1925 on this Austin, can't help but notice the pump over there on the running board. What a fantastic idea to pump up a tyre.
Yeah, it's an accessory pump called a dead easy pump with a clever little lever you pump back and forth.
Yeah. Okay, history of the car. Do you know much about its life?
In 1924, it was the very, very end of 1924. It's a 25 model. Went to Cooma, spent all of its life in Cooma. Eventually the original family cut it down to a ute, and then they re-restored it, third generation on restored it.
Wow. Back
into a Roadster, went to Canberra, and then recently to here. So.
Antony, 1929 Sunbeam. To me, that's a pretty big car.
It is. This is a 16.9 horsepower Sunbeam. It's actually the smallest Sunbeam they built in 1929.
Really?
The bigger ones are really, really big. They're 25 horsepower, 20 horsepower, much bigger.
Wow, isn't that interesting? For a car of a British car of that year. The cabin area is very generous, plenty of room in the back there. It's got a fair size front nose cone on it, wide running boards. It's a nicely placed stance of a car.
No, they're very generous proportions. It's this particular one was brought as a chassis to Sydney and bodied by Diskin and Molyneux, a Sydney coach builder. So it's got quite a handsome big saloon body. It was built for an artist in the North Shore.
Wow.
This is original colour, which is quite nice. It's called Wedgewood Blue.
Yeah. Engine up front, what's going on there, Antony?
6-cylinder engine. They're always very beautifully made. It's only a two and a bit litre, so not a big, powerful engine, but really very flexible. And actually this particular car, although it's a heavy body, by Diskin and Molyneux in Sydney at the time, it's very, very zippy and high.
Well, pushrod engine. Imagine be fairly torquey.
Oh yeah, strong, powerful car. It's slow to get up to speed. Once it's there, you sit on about 80 kilometres an hour or so. Yeah,
the way it's geared as well.
And nice big long bonnet. Really lovely to drive. Beautiful steering and four-wheel brakes.
I love the style of it. It's pretty cool. Love the pop-out screen. That's really neat.
It's got nice sliding windows all the way around, and the windscreen folds forward. And this particular car was lowered. Originally, it was built lower. The standard body for this particular one was 2 inches higher. So there are a couple of others around with taller.
Yes. The English car market for 1929, I can't get over the amount of effort that they put into their cars.
Oh, totally. And Sunbeam were really at the lead of British manufacture at the time. They're almost forgotten now. Very few people know what Sunbeam were or what they did. But at the time, they had all of the land speed records, international land speed records, Daytona Beach in Britain, some fabulous racing cars, lots of racing history all through the 20s.
1929 Sunbeam, what a remarkable car. And this particular car deserves a good mention. It pulled a caravan from Sydney to Brisbane back in 1960.
When I was a kid, I loved cars, still do. The 57 Cadillac Eldorado Brougham was the most advanced car in the world. Cost more than a Rolls. Hand-built with a stainless steel roof, cruise control, electric seats, and would you believe, air suspension. American iron. It's a passion Shannons understand. That's why they insure my daily drive, the caddy, my bike, even the house.
Call Shannons on 13 46 46. Shannons, insurance for motoring enthusiasts.
When it comes to cars, there are some brands that will remain with us forever, no matter what. The Holden was always Australia's own car, held high in the hearts of many. Those lines, that chrome, the stories around them, and the people that owned them. From the classic through to the final, you can still trust in genuine Holden and AC Delco parts, available through the Holden Certified Service Network. Moving on through this very interesting episode, are you having fun, Antony?
Oh yeah, absolutely, Fletch. It's always fun talking to cars and car people.
Especially talking about your own collection as well. It doesn't get much better than that, does it?
We're very fortunate to have some. Yeah.
Okay, a 1925 Morris. Now I know that it's got a longer name than that. You might like to share that with us.
Yeah, well, I often abbreviate it to an MG special, but that will cause angst amongst MG people. It's really a Morris Cowley Super Sport Special. So it's a Morris Cowley in its parts that have been put together in the late 1920s into the current form of a race special.
How many of these would be in Australia?
I believe there are about 8 or 10 similar looking cars of about that period, but not very many old. Most of them are built in the 1970s and 80s.
Wow.
This one has a longer history than that, but it's an interesting old thing. I've had it for about 35 years.
It's amazing. What is the history?
Came to Australia in the 30s at some point. We don't know a lot about that. There is a picture of it at Selleck's Beach in the 1930s. And then it went to a few owners around Victoria and West Australia, and then it was re-restored a few times. When I got it, it sadly had a conrod hanging out of its sump.
What's the material? Are we looking
it's
at
aluminium, so very
aluminium?
modern. Actually, lots of cars in the 20s were made of
Yeah.
aluminium. It was
Yeah.
the thing of choice.
Yeah.
Very light. It's a Rayworth body I mentioned.
And also very soft as well.
Quite soft, so
Yeah,
you've got to
yeah.
be careful with it. But yeah, and it's very low, so it's slightly low. It's got flattened springs. It's using Morris wheels on this particular car.
Yeah.
4-cylinder, it's an Oxford engine, actually slightly larger capacity, about a 2 litre, 2.5 litre, 4-cylinder. It's got a 3-speed gearbox, quite a nice gearbox.
Also, to Antony, this is we're talking the era of, in most countries, for being so proud of their hood ornaments, and I know that this is a very creative one.
This has got one of my favourite. It's a bird made by the Flying Mascots Limited Company in London.
Yeah.
They only made these. I love the idea that there are factories that only made this sort of thing. And this one has a little cam, so the wings flap quite violently when you're going along, really fast. You think it's going to take off on its own. So Flying Bird Mascot there.
Time now for the 1926 Sunbeam. Now, Antony, I know earlier I referred to this being a rather large car, and you said it was one of the smallest, but this still to me is a large car, especially when we look in the back and there's a divider window there.
Yeah, they're a big solid car, and the chassis is enormous on these things.
Yeah.
The 1440 is one of the best models they made in the 1920s.
Yep.
Quite sporty.
Yes.
It's actually a larger capacity engine than the 16. Much larger frame and body.
Yep.
This is reasonably light.
Yep.
4-cylinder engine. It's a 2.1 litre.
Yep.
Overhead valves.
A couple of subtle changes to the 25, different shape windscreen, which I think is pretty fancy for that year.
Yeah, this one's got a split windscreen on top. My partner doesn't like the windscreen open. I like mine open, so it's quite convenient. You can open one, close the other.
Another thing too, very typically English, the recess of the gauges in under the dashboard. They're always big on their timber work and then set back under the under the dash.
Lots of instruments on this model. Yeah. So you have temperature, oil, amps, a speedo.
Yeah.
They didn't really do tachometers, but good quality instruments by Jaeger.
What's been done over the years in terms of restoration? When?
So this was one of two 1440 cars bought by a doctor in Grafton in 1926. He liked this one so much he bought a sports version of the same, which was nearly identical with a slightly zipped up engine. It survived with him until 1960. Then it went to a very well-known Sydney Sunbeam collector.
Yep.
He and a friend owned this particular car, and they did a lot of work on it. At the time, it was basically an original car, so they painted and trimmed it. Yep. Changed the colour. It was green originally. Now it's smoke blue, which is also a Sunbeam colour.
It's beautiful. I love the big seats. It's got such a welcoming interior.
Oh, it's a really great old thing. So he kept it until 1980, and in 1980 he decided to do this quite radical alteration to the engine. So it has timing change normally, and he decided to fit gears, which are quieter. And he did all the work to it, beautifully beautifully done, but he didn't reassemble it, so it remained disassembled until I bought it.
Yeah, wow.
A couple of years ago, and then when I had all the bits to put it back together, I thought, well, the timing chains, I don't know how this works, and none of my friends in the Sunbeam world would really thought it could work, because it's a very complicated set of gears.
Yeah.
Apart from anything else, because of the way that the gears and the times were set up, the camshaft had to be remade in reverse, and the oil pump drives all had to be made in reverse. Very complicated bit of engineering.
Yeah.
However, when it all got back together, on the very first turn it started up and it runs so well. It's a wonderful car. Wow. I use this often when my modern Land Rover dies. This becomes the daily car. So
isn't that something, when your late model vehicle dies and you've got a 1926 backup?
Yes, absolutely. Well, all these cars have in that way from time to time, but this one is a particular favourite and very reliable.
That's beautiful. Well, I hope you're really enjoying just some of Antony's collection, and stay in your favourite chair. We'll be back with more right after this.
My passion for cars began when Nana and Pop bought their new Toyota Crown. It was Nana's, really. She loved that car. We went everywhere in it. My passion now is just the same, even though my cars are a little different. I've still got Nana's car, couldn't part with it. And I reckon if she was here today, she'd be insured with Shannons too.
Call Shannons on 13 46 46. Shannons, insurance for motoring enthusiasts.
They may not be making the classic Holden anymore, but the legacy lives on. You can still have a Holden certified service using genuine Holden and AC Delco quality parts at over 180 centres across Australia. Go to holden.com.au to find your nearest centre. Book your Holden in, maintain the pride. Yep, it goes without saying. If you own a classic, be it bike, car or truck, make sure it's insured with Shannons. Why not pick up the phone and give Shannons a call for a quote and a chat on 134646. And keep in mind too that the Shannons Club awaits you with their own in-house productions such as Shannons Club TV, Legends of Motorsport, Driven, End of an Era. You can catch classic Restos there as well, along with a host of other really cool stuff as Australia's largest automotive online hub. For more information, visit shannons.com.au. Welcome back. I mentioned earlier about the brass era. Well, we're certainly in the middle of that with this, a 1913 Republic truck. This is incredible, Antony. What can you tell us about this?
So Republic were the largest truck manufacturers in the world from 1912 or so until about 1920. They were bought out by International. But at this particular moment, they were really very skilled in truck manufacture. So it's a very basic box frame, but with a big Continental engine, a 2.5 litre engine. Very simple, magneto side valve, nothing very complicated, but huge capacity. Chain drive, 3-speed gearbox. This is a 4.5 tonne model. We believe it is the oldest Republic in the world. There's one in New South Wales at the Motor Life Museum, which is from 1920, I believe. A couple of other Republics, mostly post First World War. But this particular one is a very early one. It was the delivery truck for the Melbourne flower market.
Tell us about the boa constrictor horn.
The boa constrictor horn is one of my favourite accessories from this period. It's made by the Boa Constrictor Horn Company in London, and they specialised in this snake's head horn, which was with a flexible body and a lovely sort of deep-throated sort of honk to scare pedestrians off the road.
How cool is this for a very innovative idea from the mid-20s? A shock absorber made from friction. Now, in this case here, it's the Hereford brand, and there's 5 different settings. You just crack the centre nut and adjust from soft through to firm, do the nut back up again, and off you go. Pretty innovative stuff, and obviously preceding the double-action oil-fill shock absorbers that we know today. How's this for a cool story? 1913 Model T Ford. You've had it a long time.
Yeah, I bought this car when I was 14. It's my very first car, my first vintage car, or veteran car, and it's travelled many, many miles since then.
How did you go as a young fella buying this as your first car? What did your mates say?
They thought it was cool to have a car of any sort, so it was okay. But it took 7 years to pay for it. I was working weekends and holidays and so on.
Good for you.
And
wow.
I actually went back to the person I bought it from when I was about 20, and I went overseas and studied, and when I came back I bought it back from him again. So I bought it twice from the same person.
Not only did you buy it as your first car, it's a 1913 Model T Ford that's never been restored.
No, I was very lucky. It's had 3 owners. The original owner, who had it until about 1950, second owner, who owned it twice, and then me. I think I've actually owned it longer than anybody in its 100 or so years.
That's
life.
amazing.
Yeah,
That's
amazing old car.
Where did it spend its life?
Mostly in the Southern Highlands. It was built in Sydney
Yeah.
with a Canadian chassis. It has a body built by Steamboat in Sydney, and it was sold by Davies and Fian Motors, who were the agent. And it's an interesting one because it's a deluxe version, so it has streamlining, such as it was in 1913.
So it's the Fairmont gear.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. It had all the bells and whistles and cost quite a lot more than the standard Model T.
Now, Anthony, rounding off today's episode, there's a car here that's very dear to your heart, and I think we should close the show with that car. What's your thoughts on that?
Sure, we're going to have a look at it. It's the 1912 Sunbeam 1216.
All right, let's go check that out.
So this 1912 Sunbeam, it's a 1216 model Sunbeam behind me. An important car to me. I've just recently acquired it about a year ago from England, so it's sort of a major acquisition and long time coming, but it's a particularly fine one. I was really excited to get it. Amongst my interests with the Sunbeams I've been editing the Sunbeam Club magazine, which has been very helpful. I've met lots of great people, and it was through that I found this car for sale in Britain. It's a particularly nice one. It's a 1912 two-seater. It has a 3-litre engine, 4-cylinder engine, very high quality. The 1216 model was very famous at the time. It was designed by Louis Cotel, a French designer that worked for Sunbeam. It's the first Sunbeam that he designed, and he had a really clear engineering style which left the engines very well race developed. He particularly was keen on racing to develop the breed, and beautifully laid out and manufactured in a very high quality model. The 1216 won the Coup de l'Auto races in France in 1912. They came first, second and third, and the same year they came third, fourth and fifth in the Grand Prix, which was run at the same time. With this actual model, just slightly lightened, very little other work was done to the car. This particular one is lovely. It was designed by Sunbeam with a Sunbeam body. It still has its original 2-seater body, which is very elegant, and it was made for an engineer called Mr. Ford Smith, who had a factory in Manchester. A very particular man. I have all the original sales documents for the car, and he obviously caused quite a fuss to get exactly the car he wanted. And then every year between 1912 and 1940, with the exception of the First World War, he sent the car back to Sunbeam in Wolverhampton to be tuned and serviced. And each year it came back and he would say, he'd write to them again, say, thank you, I don't know what you've done, it runs even better than it did last time. So he was very proud of the car, enough that he kept it right up until 1940, by which time it was wildly obsolete, but still a favourite of his. So to drive the 1216 was a particularly nice model. It was only 12 years into production and manufacturing for motor cars at all, so very modern in the general layout, and a lot of French cues have been brought into design by Cotel. It only has 2-wheel brakes, but they're quite good 2-wheel brakes, so it will actually pull up quickly. It has quite tall wooden artillery wheels with beaded edge tyres, which give a nice soft ride. Very good springs. It's got 3/4 elliptic springs at the back, semi-elliptic at the front. It has a 4-speed gearbox, which is very nicely balanced, so it's a beautiful gearbox with a leather cone clutch. So the gear shifts are usually quite smooth for a crash gearbox. And the speed for a car of the period is not bad. They claimed 50 to 60 miles an hour. This particular car apparently was tested at the factory in 1919 by Sunbeam, and it made it to 70. I don't know how they did that. I don't think I'd go that fast. But it sits at 45 miles an hour really rather comfortably. I like driving down country lanes in this one with the dog, and the hood down and the windscreen folded back at a seriously steep rake. It's a wonderful evocative feeling for early motoring, and it's also reasonably quick, so you can get from A to B safely as well. So wonderful, wonderful car. I highly recommend it to anyone who has a chance to ride in one.
How cool was that? This 1912 Sunbeam, what a beautiful car. I have to comment though, Antony, the width of the cab, it's what a generous size.
Yeah, it's a nice proportion. You can fit 3 across in the front and 1 in the dicky seat behind. The unlucky person gets an exposed spot.
Absolutely brilliant. This is really a spectacular car. Antony, on that note, I'd like to thank you for the invitation here to showcase just some of what you have here. Now, tell us in terms of, you're watching the show, people might want to come and visit. How do they go about doing that?
Yeah, sure. They can contact us via our Facebook page. It's called Penny Feather, as it's spelt, Penny Feather. You'll find us quite easily that way around. There'll be a website in due course. And
Okay.
we welcome small car club visits from time to time.
All right, there you go. So up and coming website. So just keep looking on social media for that opportunity. If you are in a car club, this is well worth a drive to have a look at it. It's a beautiful property, nice and quiet, nice and secluded, and your attention to detail with your buildings, the way you've got your vehicle set out, it's a real credit to you. Thanks very much, Antony.
Thank you so much for coming, and thanks to
You're
Classic
welcome.
Restos.
You're welcome. Thank you, Antony.
Take care.
Well, I hope you've really enjoyed this week's episode of Classic Restos, featuring just some of the Eclectic collection belonging to Antony Davies. I hope you enjoyed the show. Until next week, no matter where you're watching Classic Restos from, please ride and drive safe. I'm Fletch, and I thank you very much for watching.
You can like and follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/ClassicRestosTV and watch catch-up episodes at shannons.com.au. Classic Restos is proudly brought to you by Shannons, where you can sign up to be a member of the Shannons Club, your local Holden certified service centre, Pace Farm the enjoyable egg, and Heron Forbes Machinery House, where you can buy online.